All right, welcome everyone. This is week 8, and today we'll be learning how we can use pseudo-classes and pseudo-elements to style elements in HTML. And for the missed live class we missed last week, we will be incorporating the topics we missed last week, which was meant to cover forms. So we're going to be having we're going to have both topics treated today. So today I'm going to create a form, and we're going to style the form using pseudo classes and elements. All right. Now here I have created a little style and a space for my form. Now the style I have here is a general style for the body of my page, which is just the fonts. I have set the fonts to Arial from sans serif, and the background color, and also giving a pattern for the font. Then I also styled my text, the H2, which is here on the body. I have set the text to be centered and giving a little space at the bottom to indicate. Now let's start creating our forms. So last week we were meant to look at the different inputs and types of forms. So we're going to start with the form, and here I want to have my field sets. So the field set is like a form container that it gives a border, like a margin, around the forms. So this helps to structure a form properly to let a user know what this particular form be about. So in the field sets, you have your legend. The elements legend is what we impute the title of the form. Or if you want to give a different title, you want the user to see something else, but it's going to make a little sense if you give the title at the legend. All right. So today's form, we're going to be creating a registration form. Going to name it registration form. Now, in between the legend is where we impute the title, and in the field set is where also we're going to start our form. Now we are going to use the form tag, which we're going to include all our form fields, which will put our form fields and form elements input as well. Alright, now first here we have my ID as given a class attribute action. So we're going to look at the form attributes at the end of this lesson. But first, let's focus on the form fields and labels. Now for our first form field here, we're going to have a label. Now the label is what we use to specify the name of this form field. So the user is going to see whatever we impute in between the opening tag and the close tag of the label. Now for this label, we're going to be asking the user to give his full name to our full name. So we state full name. And this form field is for full name. So the four attributes which holds the name of this form, which is full name. Now next we want to have our input field using the input elements. So I'll be using the shortcut for a faster option. And the type here has been given already. The type attribute specifies the type of form field we want to have here. So this label is for full name, so definitely what we are going to be using here, imputing here are text. So that's why the type attributes will be text, and the name will be same as the name of the form, which is full name. Alright. Now, then for the value, we will not be using the value for this illustration. So when we advance, we're going to make use of the value attributes in forms. Now let's use a placeholder. The attribute placeholder is going to tell the user what he's meant to do in this area of the form field. So I'm going to put the text here. That's going to say enter. So I'm going to save this. Let's see how this displays on the page. Now we have the field sets, which is telling us that this form is a registration form, and the full name label and also the full name input, which we also have the placeholder inside the input telling the user what is meant to appear in this form field. So let's keep creating the forms. For start now, we're going to have email. So we'll be looking at different input types. This registration form is going to hold inputs for different types of form types. So we're going to have next for email, and the attribute for email. There you go. Now the input type we're going to be using here would be for email, and it's not for text, since we're going to be having email imputed in this. The name of this level is email. Placeholder. Right, so now I'm not using all the attributes in this form because of time, so I'm just going to focus on the basic form. So you can always refer back to the last lesson to get the extra attributes, other attributes you can add to your form input. So it depends on the form you're operating that requires the type of attributes you want to use. So for this illustration, I'm just going to create this form real quick, and we're going to focus on how to style the form using pseudo-classes and elements. And for our next tutorial, we'll be having password. And the inputs we're going to be having here will be for password. That's password. Place that key. Now we also have let's make this form fields required. We have the required attributes, which which I'm going to specify here to make this form fields required for the user, so the user does not miss these functions. Now, this is not the only way you can validate form fields. You can do that with JavaScript as well, but as we progress, we'll learn that when we get to JavaScript. But for now, you can always use the required attributes to make sure that this form field is going to be a compulsory input for the user. Next, we're going to have for gender. I'll be putting this in a div. So you can see that I want to put this label in a particular div. It's a class called input. I'm going to name this input. Since I will be styling this form using pseudo-classes and elements, so I want to make sure that this particular area of the form field is being styled properly. So for this, I need to use the class for this, so it doesn't affect the other areas of the form as well. And this container, we're going to have the label. In this label, we want to have different options for gender. You can specify the label that it is for gender. And here the input type will be using radio. So this is for situations where you want the user to select just one particular option out of the options that you're going to provide. So the options here, we are going to use the input type radio for the option for the user to select. And for this, we require an ID to bind the inputs to the options that the user is going to select. Now the IDs we're going to have here will be name, gender, value, this one. We're going to have the name of this input, which will be name. So I'm going to put this in the label, so it's going to display properly. So I want the inputs. So I want the inputs to be for the event. Is someone saying something?
Mommy?
Sorry, please, if you are not asking a question, can you kindly mute your mic? Thank you very much. All right, so we're creating a form field where the user is going to input, it's going to select options for a particular label, which is for this gender. So the name of this form field is gender. Now I have an input radio for that it's going to be radio. The type is going to be radio, and I want the user to be able to select this input if he falls within this category. So I'm going to create another option for another category, and the type still remains radio. Going to have ID. And this bank ID here we have the female, since this is going to bind this input to the label for the female option. So the next gender, and our label. Option is the same here in this label. This is this form field. Now let's have another type of form field for let's say interest. So I'm going to also put a selective. And I'm going to give this class right. So this part of our form will be for interest. So I'm going to just give a label here that is going to be seen before the form inputs, which is interest. Now let's have the inputs that will be displayed. Now for this one, we're going to be using checkbox. The input type here will be checkbox, and I am going to have this option to be interest for music. So I want to name the ID and the name for music. So I'm going to give an ID, the name music, and the name music as well. Music. Now let's have the label for this option. Label for this option is from music, and the name the users will see will be music as well. And next, we're going to have another option that's going to be a checkbox. An ID, and this option will be for sports. and value remains the same. And the label is false points. Name of the option is fine. Right. Now this should be enough for this div. So I can set time. So I want to have other form input type. So let's have for the option type. So I'm going to create another form field, and this one will be for country. Now to have options, we're going to use the select element, and in between the opening and close of the select element, we're going to have options. And for the select, we are going to have an ID. And this will be for the country. And the name. For this, we'll not be needing the class unless you want to create a style for this particular select option. And you can as well add the required attributes to the select on the tag as well. Now we want to have our option, and we will use the option attributes, option elements. And in the option, we're going to give the options that we want to specify. So for our first option, we're going to have so I'm going to put the value first. The value will be HC, and the option will be so we're going to be creating the different options that we're going to have in this form field. So we're going to have another option, and this option will be, let's say, UK. This will be United Kingdom. Let's have a third option. The third option is set Canada. Alright, I think this should be enough. So we have given three options here for the option form field. So I'm trying to do this as fast as possible so we're able to meet up with time to cover up other topics. I want to have another label for this is going to be for dates. So let's say this should be for dates of birth. That's birth date. So dates of birth should be this free. And for this form field, we're going to be having a different form input type, which would be for date. So this is going to make sure that only dates have been entered on this form field. Now let's have another label, and this will be for the last one. So we're going to have comments. So let's have a text area for comments. And the label will be same as additional comments. Okay. Now the input type we have for comments like this, we use text area in place of the input element. So here, instead of using an input element, we use text area. And we can actually decide how the text area should, the text area comes to the default border, so we can decide how big the width and the length or the size in general of this text area. So for this text area, I want to have an ID. I bind this and the main comments. As well as the name for the inputs attributes. Now I want the row to be 4. I want it to be big. And I do not need this set. So you can always explore your text area to it's much easier to learn when you try to apply these things yourself. So you can try to see what type of row, what 4 will give to you, what 8 gives to you, and 80. So because of time, we'll not be able to see how the sizes are going to display. But for now, I'm just going to use my the 4 value for the rows, and I want the placeholder to tell the user what he is meant to input in this text area. So in this text area, user is expected to enter any additional comments. Now finally, let's have our button. So we have input type that has the button type, But here I'm just going to use the button elements to have a button at the end of the form. Now for the type, you can still use button, but for this type, it's meant to be a submit button. So there is also a value that we have as submit. So this is also a button as well. And what we want the user to see here would be submit. So you always refer back to the class lessons. There are several of these attributes I did not place too much focus on. So you can always refer back to the class lesson to have full understanding of most of the attributes that were not used here. But just because of time, so we can meet up. These are the most basic attributes and form inputs that you have for forms. Alright, so let's see how this displays on the web page. Now we have all the input fields that we have created here. We have for the full name, we have the full name inside, we have the email address, the password. Now this is where we are going to make use of pseudo-classes and elements, because right now what we have here is a form, and I am not using the break tag to display the form fields in a new line. So I want to do this using CSS to style this form to make sure that each of the form fields are displayed properly and the form has a better look and feel at the end of the day. So let's make use of CSS, pseudo-elements and classes. So first, before we jump into the pseudo-elements and classes, let's style this form to display better. Now, there are different CSS properties we can use as long as you know exactly what you want. There are different ways we can make that possible when we are styling our forms. Now, for this form, I want to style this with a specific choice of mine. So I want the form itself to display properly first. So I'm going to start with the form elements to apply my style. Now, as you can see here, the form isn't really looking well structured. So this is how you style your forms. Now I've selected the form element, which is the general form elements here. So whatever style I apply here will apply to the whole body of the form. Okay, now for the form, I want first of all the width. So I'm going to use max width for responsiveness. So I'm going to say I want the width to be 400 px. So let's see how 400 px looks like here. Let's apply more styles to the form. Also wants a margin. So this is going to create a space around the form. So I want the margin to be 0 also. This will make it much responsive and make sure that it's well centered. And also I want the background color of the form itself to have a different color. I want it to be white. I'm going to use a hexadecimal color. This is going to give me a version of what. Just not refreshing. There's something wrong with this form. Trying to change the code. Okay, so I'll figure out what's preventing this stars from displaying. Right, next I want to have a padding of 20 px. And I also want a border radius. This is going to make the edges of the forms will have a particular display, a rounded display. So I want the border radius to be 8 px. And box shadow. So this is going to give a shadow to the form itself. I do not want it to be displayed far from the form. Now you can also explore how you can apply box shadow to your elements, not just on the forms. So there are different values you can use depending on what you want. So for this value, I just want it to not to display too far, so the shadow will be very close to the form itself. Now you can see for each properties I applied, the width of the form remains 400 px. The margin was set to auto to make sure that it's displayed in the middle, and the background color to be white. So you see the background of the form itself is white. Since I didn't apply to the field set, I applied to the form itself. So the background of the form itself is white, and the border radius, which is the edge of this form, as you can see here, has a curve of 8 px and a little shadow just below it. So it's not very visible, which I have chosen. So it depends on what you want. So I just want a little different look on the form, not so obvious, but less normal. Alright, so now we have our form styled. We can still apply more styles to the different elements we have on the form already, just to make sure that they're displayed properly. So now let's apply style to the label. And for the label, there are different ways we can make the label display the way we want. But for this, I want first of all the display to be block. So I want each of the labels. Now remember, the labels are these visible labels, the name of the form field you see. So for full name is a label, then the input, which is the text, is what we have here in the container. So this is a label, and this is an input, and this is a label, and this is the input. So now this label is what we are styling here. So I have set the display. So if you recall how we learned how to display elements on HTML using this display property. So the block is going to make sure Hello everyone, I am very sorry for that break. I had a little network glitch. So I'm going to resume sharing my screen. Play to display as a block format. And next, we want to make sure that there are spaces between the labels, as you are seeing here that it doesn't look nice when the
You can't see your screen again.
the network is quite unstable. So I fixed that now. Alright, so we're trying to create out of the video. Now I want spaces between the labels, so we use the margin button. So we can always have
with screen. Can't see your screen inside man. But,
Hello? We can't hear him.
Hello.
I think
we
he's
can't hear
having the network challenge.
Yeah, I think
No.
so.
Yeah,
He's
it's
having a
obvious.
network challenge. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just be patient, I think.
Yes.
Yes. I'm sorry about my network. I hope it gets better. All right. So for the form label, we're trying to make sure the labels do not display close to each other. So for this, I'm going to use a margin bottom to make sure that each labels. Hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, so I'm going to use a margin of 5px, and let's see how this displays. Now we have some little space between the labels itself. So this style only applies specifically to the label itself. And as we once we can decide which of the labels as we want to apply specific style. So this is why I created a class for some labels and inputs. All right, so now let's start the inputs and select elements. The input element, select elements, and the text area element. So these are the different type of input elements we created in the form. So let's make sure that they are all displayed properly. So this style, we're going to be applying it to the input fields, and we have input elements, we have select elements, and as well as the text area elements. So what do we want this? So just like we did for the label, we want the margin as well to be 5px, the margin bottom to be 5px, so we can have equal spaces as well. So let's see how this looks like first of all. So as you can see now, there are now equal spaces between the form fields, which is the first label, name, full name, the inputs itself has equal spaces, just like every other form field in this form. All right, so let's apply more styles to this. Okay. Now, next we want to have particular width, so we can decide the width of this of each of the input fields. So let's give the width to be 100%, so you can see that it can stretch from end to end of the form itself. Going to be 100%. So it's going to take the 100% width of the form itself. So let's see first of all how 100% displays. So 100% takes out the whole space on the form, and if I make this 50%, it's going to take 50% of the form space itself. So I want it to be 100. Now we have that, and we're also going to have padding. And just a little padding of 8px, as well as one specific type of border. Now we already have borders for the input fields, but I want to make sure that it has a custom border. So I'm going to use the border shorthand property to specify the width of the border line itself, and I want it to be solid, and also the color, custom make color and not the default color, which was black. Now, I also want to have a border radius, just like we did for the form. And with the border radius, we're going to have a curve of for px. Going to apply box sizing. So as we go on, we're going to make use of these styles more often in our work, and you see how it gets easier as you go. So you'll be able to know exactly what you need. So the main thing is just knowing exactly what you want for your page, and then make use of the different CSS properties to make sure that it comes to life. Now I want the size of the text that will be imputed in this form field to be 16 px. Save this, just saying that there isn't much time left. Save this and let's see how this displays. Now you can see that the form is looking more lively now, not so normal, the default look of the form before we apply the styles. So let's keep adding styles to this form to make sure that we have a unique and good looking form. Alright, now I want to style the select elements alone, or I could choose any of these input fields to apply a specific style to. So I want the select elements which we apply to this boundary. So as you can see here, it's just the default display. So when I click it, it drops down, it gives me the different options that I've added to it, but it's just displaying normal. So I want to make sure that it looks different. Now let's make sure that we are selecting the right element, and this element is the select element. So I want the select element to have a pseudo. So before I start with the pseudo classes and elements styles, I want us to know that pseudo classes are used to define special states of an element. So for example, we're going to have this select element being styled here. Now when we use pseudo class to define the special state, for example, let's say I want the hover let's say I want focus for this in particular. Alright, so I want focus to be the pseudo class that I want to apply to this. Well, first, like I was saying, the pseudo classes are used to define the special states of an element. So when we use focus here, for example, the targets, the focus is going to be on the style we apply to this particular element. It's going to focus on this targeted element, which we have selected here, which is select. Then before I show you the other styles, I'm going to add the style to this. So this is going to make sense when we apply the styles. So for this select element itself, we want to have an outline. Or we can decide we want to have a border color. So since the input element here, which is the select element, is already having a border, so let's change the border color of this default look. So we can say to use the header as a text color for this. Alright, now let's apply box shadow as well to this. Let's apply shadow to the container itself. Right, now let's see how this is applied specifically to the select. So now when I click on the select input, you can see that it has the color which we have added to it, light shade of blue. So this is the focus, so which means that if I'm not on the select input, which is for this option here, it's not going to give any of the style that we have specified in it. So but when I click on it, you can see the border radius was the border color that we have set here is now blue because it's now focused on it. So this is just a way to let the user know that you are on this input field. So let's say I maybe somehow clicked on another page or another tab, and I want to return back to my form just to be sure where I am. This is going to make me know that, okay, this is where my current focus is. So it's letting you know that this is where you are on the form by using the color and the shadow as well. So the shadow gave its color, and the container as well has a change of color. So this is one use of pseudo classes. So there are other ways we can style our forms with pseudo classes. So let's pick out another one. First, let's style this text area. So the text area, I want the height. So you can specify, because in the inputs, I didn't specify the height and size. I just gave a row of 4. So that is for the length. So now I want to specify the height here that I want the container to have. So using CSS, I'm going to give the height of the text area to be 100 px. And we can also use the CSS resize property. So there's a resize property that we can use to make sure that the text area is being, no matter how the texts are being imputed, it's going to remain vertical. So here I'm going to specify that I want it to be vertical. So it allows the vertical resizing of the text area. So if I refresh this now, we have the height, and also no matter how much the text I impute here is going to remain in this vertical format. It's not going to display in any other form. Now let's apply more styles to the elements. So we have a button here, and I'm going to apply a style to the button. And for the button, I want the button to have padding. And padding of 10 px, top and bottom, and 20 px left and right. So let's look at how it's going to be displayed first. So you see the button got bigger, but we have a 10 px space from top and bottom, and 20 px left and right, so giving us a more padded button. And the submit text now looks better. Now let's add a background color to make the button stand out. So I make use of these hexadecimal colors because they have more options. They give more options, and type of colors that are not among the traditional colors that we have. And then I want to add a text color. And the text color will be just white. Now, I don't want the border to be visible around the button itself, so I'm going to set the border to none. And to make the button have a different feel from the form itself, so you know that you're about to click. If you can't read, you want to know that, okay, this is going to be a button where I'm going to click and send data to. So I want to make sure that when I hover around here, it displays differently. So to do that, we use the CSS property called cursor. So if I specify the cursor to be pointer, different values you can use, but here I'm going to use pointer so you can see. So the color has been applied, and when I hover around, you can see it's no longer the usual mouse icon. Now it changes to a click icon. So you can tell exactly that, okay, this area is meant to be clicked. So even if the user doesn't know this is a button, like just hovering around it is going to see that, okay, this is clickable. All right. We can add more styles to this. Now, since we removed the borders, let's give it a border radius of 4 pixels. And I want the font size to be standard, just like we have for the rest of the font. So I want it to be 16 pixels, just like what applied to other things. So now we have the button looking more rounded and more beautiful than the default. Now let's apply more styles. I want to apply a pseudo class here, and this will be for the button. So I want, whenever the user hovers around the button, it's going to get a different. It's going to get different look. So I want the background color, the button. So you can always check online to see there are different apps you can use to pick out hexadecimal codes for colors. So there are different apps that makes use of picker, color pickers, even Adobe Photoshop has. So you can always explore to see which of them matches the color you want. So let's see how the hover works. Okay, so this as an example. I want to check my color. Change to see if the color is going to be the problem. So this isn't applying yet, then I'll come back to see what the problem could be. So next we want to have another pseudo class selection, and this time I want it for the input field. So the input element, and the pseudo class we're going to be using here is placeholder. my IDE isn't highlighting this. So while you explore the different type of pseudo classes, you might want to check if your IDE might have any issues displaying it. So my IDE isn't displaying this option, so I'm going to skip that one. Now, there are also other ways we can add pseudo classes. So let me make sure we add something to the input field. And this time we can use focus. So let's do something when we are on the input field, when we're on the input elements. Now, there's also another way to make sure that this applies to the label as well. So when you have used the pseudo class focus like this, you can use the addition operator, and you can specify what you want to add to it by, okay, here I'm going to specify that I want the label. So input focus plus the label. And also I want this to be applied to the other type of inputs. So I'm going to use a comma separated selecting. So I'm going to add more to this selection. I want the select as well. I select inputs type, select inputs, and this will also have a focus pseudo class plus the label. So I'm going to use an enter key so you can see all in one. And for the next one, we want to start the text area as well. So it's going to have a uniform focus for every input. I'm trying to just show you the different type of pseudo classes we can. So this is going to so I'm just going to write down most of the pseudo classes here because I've spent too much time already. I'm sorry for the network interruptions. So I want to also show you another type of pseudo class called the valid, and here I want to specify when the input field has met its requirements. So let's try this with input. And it's going to be for invalid. So this style, whatever style we apply here will be for when the input field, the user has not met the requirements that is required for a particular input field. So we want to do this for the select input field too. And as well for the text area, since these are what we have as our input field. And all we want here is that the borders should have a different color when the field has not met its requirements. Right, then we can as well do the same thing, but this you can repeat this same style for the valid as well. I'm just going to copy this. And make sure it's for valid. At this time, I want a different color. Alright, so these are most of the pseudo classes that you can cover for this class for the meeting, before the meeting comes to an end. Alright, so now we have the colors being displayed. Now, if I enter a wrong input type here, let's say, since this is for text, I want to enter numbers. Now, this might not work, but let me get this right first. So I want to enter a name. So I'm going to enter my name. And you see that the border of the input field is showing green because it has met its requirements. So the input type that was required here was for a text, and because I've imputed a text, it has given me the class style I have assigned to it, which is for valid, it gives us the green, and then for invalid, which we're going to see here, it remains red because it has not met the required inputs data that is meant to be in this input. So this is as much as we can cover for this time. So you can always refer back to the class lesson to get more and explore other type of pseudo classes and elements as well. I'm sorry for the time I took with the network. All right, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask now before we end the class. And you can always reach out to me in the class group if you have any challenges. Okay, there's a question. Why styling this select elements? Okay, all right, so I'll start with your first question. So you asked why styling the select elements. What does the focus mean? So the focus for this select now we can also add this same pseudo selector, this class selector for other elements as well, but the focus is meant to let the user know that you are on a particular field, and it's just okay. So if we click on this, the default before we set the focus to have a border color and a box shadow, before that we had the default look, and all the form fields had that same default look. So to make it stand out, to make your form field stand out, this could be applied to every other input type, elements like the text area and also the input element. But I just want you to see that this is possible using the pseudo class selector. And when you set the focus, it means whenever you are on that particular input field, it's going to give whichever style you have specified. Now, what I did is to make sure that it has a different color whenever I'm on that field and has a box shadow. So this focus is just going to say, okay, we are on this particular input field, and this is why it's displaying like this. So the select input field was for this country label, and you can now see that because I have selected a particular country, it's showing green. because we've set the pseudo class for valid when a form in input field meets its requirements, like we have here for input, select, and text area. So the select has a valid pseudo class selector, and the border color has been set to green whenever it meets a valid input. So if I had not selected anything in this field, it would have red color. Now, when I click it, it gives me a focus color. You can decide whichever color you want. So it just draws the attention to the user that this is where your focus should be because you are on this particular input. So it's the style you apply to it that is going to make a lot of sense to the user to know that, okay, this is where I am on. So the focus just gives it a specific class to style. That's what this focus was able to do for us. So whatever style we apply using the focus is going to be specific to that, and it's going to give it this standout. You also have to make sure you give it a standard style to make the user knows that yes, this is where it's the style. This is where the user is currently on the form. Now for your second question, can you explain why the attribute for in the label of gender? Okay, let me go back to gender. Okay, so for the label gender, I decide not to use a label because I decide not to use the for because the label gender was meant to just tell the user that you are on the gender section. So this is not going to give any value to the form when you submit, but what it's going to get is for the form. So okay, yeah, so I've specified gender. Now here as well, I can make sure that the name is gender. So when I submit this form, it's going to send the data to the right container or the right variable when I've created a container for it to be stored using JavaScript. So for this for here, I can decide to put the gender as the name. So it just says that these options are for this label. So I used for here I used the so I'm going to change this since this should not be here. So I'm going to make sure that I bind this to this by making sure that I use the same form name. So formally, thank you for drawing my attention to this. So normally I should have made sure that the name here is for gender. So here the name would be male for the name and not gender. So this is going to make sure that it's binding this to the label that I've created for the user to see where the input field is going to be entering these options to. So this gender is not required here initially, so I didn't put any name here because this is just going to hold a text that is going to let the user know that this section is for the options for gender. So I have the label here, which the input is going to bind it to, and as well for the other option too. All right, Ms. Bumi, you want to ask a question?
Sorry, yes, sorry. Now why I'm asking is this. My question is this. I think we're made to understand that when we have a label, the input is supposed the attribute ID on the input is supposed to bind it with the label.
Yes, to the label.
And the value for the for should be the same for the value for the ID.
Yes.
Is that not so?
Yes. So that's why I corrected this. So I learned that I had error because initially I wanted to bind it to the label for the gender.
Okay, okay.
But yes, so I changed my mind while creating the form, and I decided to have each label for each input. But I just want this gender label to display before the rest of the options, so the user can tell which section is on. So now, while you're filling the form, here you're seeing the gender, but what the input is bind to is the labels, male and female. Now, I really didn't use all the attributes properly as much as I can, but I was able to, I just made sure to meet up with time to create this particular form as quick as possible. So if you have any other extra confusions or questions about it, please feel free to reach out to me. But what we have here is the basic elements that are required for a form and the attributes as well. And we focused on styling this form using pseudo-classes and the different CSS properties that are there to use to style form elements as well. All right. Don't forget to reach out to me if you have any challenges. So I'll see you guys next week, and I wish you all the best.